Welcome back to the Two Blues podcast and to Two Blues Day, not Tuesday. Back again, another week, another Tuesday, which means myself and Mr. C Money Picks on your streams, talking everything football, not just Chelsea, but predominantly Chelsea. And this week, Chelsea unbeaten in Europe, confirmed through to the knockout phases, of the Conference League. Unbeaten, Shamrock Rovers 5-1, Mark Gue with a hat-trick. We both did our little pieces on that last week. Obviously, myself in my live match reaction and Charms in Chopping It Up with Charms. So make sure to go and watch those if you haven't already. But another thing that happened this week, as well as Chelsea drawing with Everton in a bit of a, nonchalant, bit of a nothing game, really. It was a disappointing game, to be honest. Well, from a neutral perspective, as much as from a Chelsea perspective. But that isn't the only thing. With Arsenal and Liverpool both conceding 16 goals now in the Premier League this year. Chelsea's 04-05 record of 15 goals conceded in a single season, which is still to me, to this day, unbelievable. But they conceded 15 goals in an entire season. That record remains for another year. Charms, how are you doing, brother? First off, Christmas Eve. Good to have you people. Good to see everyone. Appreciate everyone tuning in. Like, comment, subscribe. Charms, how you doing? How's your Christmas going so far? And do you ever think that record will ever be beaten?
Well, yeah. No, first of all, Christmas is amazing. Little difference in locale in my new bedroom. There might be a bit of a delay because it's absolutely bugger all signal up here, but it's the best I can do without you lot hearing my mum's karaoke. So you're welcome, just before it said. But nah, man, it's going to be, it's records like that, they get set and they just don't get broken, you know what I'm saying? I mean, 15 goals over a year is a joke. It gets broken by this, most people would have conceded that many by this point, regardless of how solid your defence is. And, it's the back end of December, we're about halfway through the year. And I think it's a record that is just one of them that you really have to understand the game to understand how difficult an achievement like that is. I mean, it's not like, the game's changed and now there's less goals scored in football matches. I would argue there's more goals scored than ever nowadays, which is maybe your only counterpoint. But yeah, man, to score, to concede 15 in a year is an absolute joke. I mean, you concede an average of 1 in every 3 games. It's bizarre. Never heard of it.
Yeah, and I feel like teams are conceding a lot more, and it goes more often than not. People say, the Premier League's getting worse, back to the good old days. I know we saw the odd thrashing in the good old days and the odd 6-1, and you remember famous games like the 8-2 Manchester United, and there were some huge games, Chelsea beating Arsenal 6-0, games that just stick out in your memory as huge wins. But I feel like this, over the last couple of Premier League seasons, definitely. I mean, last season, Chelsea were involved in so many 7-goal plus games, 4-3s, 4-4s, 4-2s, 4-1s, that there were so many different scorelines in there. And then this season, again, Tottenham have, I think, scored, or there's been 7 goals in the last 3 Tottenham games. Our game against Tottenham, 4-3. The game against Liverpool the other day, where did it finish? 6-2, 6-3, whatever it was. There's the quality of attacking, I think, has definitely gone up. And I think these days it's so much more difficult to be a defender. I think in terms of the Premier League as a whole, when you talk about what's changed, I think the gap in improvement and, centre backs and defending, I think the quality of defending has gone down in on average. I think in terms of finding a decent quality defender is a lot harder these days, whereas finding an attacker that can score you goals, I feel like they're a dime a dozen in the Premier League these days.
Yeah, and I mean, the amount of strikers we've seen come into the league as supposed to be, this new prospect, or they're supposed to rip it. To be honest, the only striker that actually matched the hype that they came in with is probably Erling Haaland. And I mean, this season he's been non-existent. So it is, as you said, a dime a dozen to find a striker that is worth the weight that they say that they're measured at. Lukaku, a great example of it. At United, at Chelsea, a £100 million striker could tear it up in Europe, could tear it up at this, in Italy could tear it up here and do this and do England can't. I feel like it's far and away the hardest league for strikers to get on the ball. I mean, we've had seasons where Nicolas Anelka's won the Golden Boot with 20 goals. He did that for Chelsea. And it's probably the only league where you'll be able to get away with something like that just because of how difficult it is in the league when you're facing those big blocky defenders who are willing to hurt you, which is pretty much what it comes down to in English football.
And how do you feel, moving on to the other point that kind of we were talking about this week, how do you feel about Chelsea's European run? Obviously unbeaten in Europe, not that we expected anything, but, it was fairly comfortable throughout, and we do both, along with the rest of the Chelsea fan base, expect to win this competition. But just talk us through your thoughts in general about kind of our performances, and obviously particularly with such a heavily changed team, the B team. Do you think that's going to change in the knockout phases? Are we going to incorporate more A-team players?
So, at first, when we were winning these games slowly, a couple good wins here, and then the ball started really rolling, and Nkunku's ticking on, scoring the hat-trick, what felt like every week, and now Mark Hughes kicking on. These younger kids who, were missing open goals at the beginning of the tournament, managing to find the net multiple times, stay composed. I think that this is working for this B team in order not only getting them the minutes, getting them the game time, getting them the experience, but just keeping them active and keeping them fit and playing games. And I think that, as much as on paper it makes a lot of sense to, when the competition gets maybe add the Cole Palmers and the Caicedos and the Cucurellas. But for me, I think that quite frankly, they deserved it. I think that we've done so well with this B team. I think that they've earned their right to play their way through to the final. And I can't believe, there's certain players like Kieran Dewsbury-Hall, which is just absolutely, I can't believe I'm basically saying I think that they should complete the tournament when we have a player like Caicedo or Lavia or Enzo who can go in and fit that role. But listen, you make the shoe, you may as well wear them. You get us all the way to the final. You get us all the way to the bit that's relevant to the knockout group stage. Let's just do. It's not like we're gonna have any fucking problems, is it, man? It's like the teams we're playing our teams that we should be. Even our B teams should be, and they should beat them comfortably. So I think the team shouldn't necessarily be rotated. I just think this is when we start keeping the idea of a Cole Palmer on the bench, because if we do go 1-0 down, we need to back, because we need to win this tournament. So I think, take it serious, but to some degree, be as sparing as you can on the trigger when it comes to changing people around the pitch.
And what about the flip side of that? Obviously, we now haven't got a European game for 3 months, and there are a couple of cup games, or one cup game at the moment sprinkled in there with Morecambe in the FA Cup. Obviously, we have to beat them to progress, but, touch wood, there will more likely be more FA Cup games. Apart from that, there's not many opportunities other than Premier League games for these B team players to get involved and to get a chance and to make their opportunities, or to make their impression, on this squad and Enzo Maresca. Other than training, chances are going to be very limited. So who do you have your eye on in this? Again, I'm going to keep referring it to the B team. I don't like the term B team per se, but it's very straightforward and easier just when we're having a quick conversation to call it A team and B team. So anyone that's offended by that, go fuck yourself. But in terms of this B team, are there any players, and I know there are, who do you have your eye on to break into this A team? And, name as many as you want.
Yeah, it's difficult, isn't it? Because it's there's a reason why there's an A and a B side to this coin, to this Chelsea players paradox that we kind of have, because that's pretty much what it is. It's a paradox. You have players who have the ability above other players, that sometimes the form can dip below players who are in that B side, who can look fantastic, like a Mark Hughes. And I think he's a good place to start, because I think that, it's unfair with the amount of goals and opportunities he's had up front to not even get a sniffing at the Chelsea A side. And I think he's done very well in the time and the games he's had, and obviously very young player, 18 years old, wise beyond his years. It's going to take an awful lot to try and fit into that team. I mean, even if you play him wide because you don't want to move Jackson, then you got to get rid of either Neto or an informed Sancho, and if not, it's a Madueke who's earned it more. So I just struggle to look at that B team and pick any player bar maybe the goalkeeper who I could say can argue for a position here. Now, this is when I think Philip Jorgensen is going to have 2 or 3 months to really be saying, listen, I want to be playing against these Southamptons. I want to be playing against Everton. I want to be playing against fucking Brentford. I want to be playing against the teams that aren't in the biggest stint of form because I want Premier League minutes. And I think that's a fair enough argument, particularly with how Robert Sanchez is not even playing, but how he's been received by everyone around the club. I don't think he's the most popular figure at the minute. So I think that the goalkeeper is probably the one opportunity where we can actually see a breakout in the squad. I think left back, right back, I think Renato Vega, but it's just, it's too blocked up. We just have what we need, and we have it in bunches. And even if that revolves around Badia Shield playing out right back sometimes, I don't mind it. But yeah, I think that the only real player who's going to be able to vie for a spot in the 18 is Jorgensen. And the obvious other one is Nkunku, but we spoke about this over the last 3-4 weeks. I find it so difficult to place Nkunku in that side right now, particularly with all the players who are fit. The Mudryk situation's definitely helped Nkunku just a little bit. But yeah, I don't think it's going to be something that has like a long-term ramification. Oh, look how well he played against Panathinaikos. Let's play him against City. Like, it's a little bit night and day. But yeah, I think that the next 3 months is going to really say a lot. Those cup games are going to say an awful lot. And I think that what we don't see, what's happening in training, Cobham, what's going on with Enzo Maresca, how he's feeling about the club, I think that's going to say an awful lot about the future, particularly in the next couple of months.
I mean, you've spoken about the Robert Sanchez situation on one of your Chopping It Up with Charms, or at least one of your Chopping It Up with Charms episode. It feels like we've been talking about it all season. Robert Sanchez or Philip Jorgensen. And we are both on the side of Philip Jorgensen. I mean, I can't speak for you, but I feel like we both agree. I feel like his distribution is far better. He's just far more comfortable on the ball. And while Robert Sanchez is great shot stopping wise, Philip Jorgensen has also shown that he is able to pull out some fantastic stops. He pulled out a great couple stops against Southampton. And obviously Heidenheim, fantastic. What was it? 11 saves. Most we've seen since Petr Cech. Phenomenal from a B team goalkeeper, whatever he's supposed to be called. But you've been talking about Robert Sanchez, and as much as I agree with you, he's obviously had kind of a really good past month. I think 3 of his last 4 Premier League performances, with the exception of that Tottenham one, have been very, very solid. I think he was man of the match, or he was given man of the match against, in the Everton game. And I know that not many people shone in that game, but he made some great saves then, some fantastic saves against Everton, and some fantastic against Brentford, and some fantastic saves against, I think it wasn't Southampton, Aston Villa as well. He made some great saves in that win as well. So he's had 3 great games out of the last 4. Do you feel like you're starting to see what Maresca sees in him in terms of his big game performance? And do you think he can fine tune that distribution, or do you think this is something that is just set in stone? He can only ever have a couple of games, and then it's just back to the Robert Sanchez that we know and hate.
I mean, you can call it a hot take if you like, but I don't necessarily think so. I think the only one of them where he had like an out-and-out great game was the Villa match. I thought the Everton one was a little bit lackluster, if you will. And outside of that, it's a couple of good saves and some good moments. But I don't think the overall, wow, what a game he's had. I think it's totally replaceable. And I can't say that against Jorgensen. You read the stat against Heidenheim. And, you can read stats as one thing, but you can watch the football and it's completely another. Like, he should not have got to a couple of those. But there was one of them that sprang over the top, got the geezer centre forwards right there. He's headed it and he's aimed it at the corner. And Jorgensen's just got just the right height, the right speed to it. Like, it just looked good. It looked like a confident save. And, we talk about ability, and I've literally just compared Heidenheim and Everton. And I don't think there is a team in the Premier League that you can compare to Heidenheim, including Southampton. It's getting a little bit to the point of I feel like we're playing on broken string. And we've seen that before, we've seen players, even like a Malo Gusto, played, lots of football great for a long period of time. And we're starting to get the idea of maybe he's good, but actually to seeing the truth. And, the Cucurella's the other side of that coin. He was pushed in. Do we like this guy? What does he see in him? and now you can't take him out the squad. You could argue, you know what I mean? So there are two sides to it. I just feel like and that is, I just don't think he's the guy to be Chelsea's long-term number one, and particularly if we genuinely plan on challenging for this Premier League title, challenging for a European title, and even challenging for a domestic cup, we're going to be a bit more like sort of lax with who we have in arguably the most important single position on the pitch, which is in goal. You got no one else to rely on by your back line. You can't use their hands week in, week out. It's night and day compared to what I see with Robert Sanchez. I think in the modern day, that's huge. So give me the guy who's going to be a little bit more athletic and he's going to be a little bit less boisterous on the save. He's probably going to have a low for the other team come the end of the season, which is what I can imagine it would be with Jorgensen. But that's just me. It's all rhetoric. It's all what ifs. I'm getting to that point with Robert Sanchez. He's just attention seeking. Attention seeking goalkeeping. I've never seen anything like that.
I think you're done. I'm not sure. You froze up a couple of times on my stream, and the audio is quite all right because the audio is quite laggy as well. So I wasn't sure. I nearly interjected a couple of times. Yeah, man. I hear that. I feel like he's you need to give him a little bit more credit, or we should give him a little bit more credit, and obviously credit where credit is due in this Chelsea side is what I feel. No matter how you feel about the player, and like I said, I've slagged off Cucurella for years, for what, year and a half, maybe 2 years, and he's turned me around. I've always said it's taken a lot for a player to get back on my good side, but he's managed to do it with the performances. Robert Sanchez, he needs more. Don't get me wrong. He needs more than just a couple of good performances to get back there. But at the same time, I've got to recognize that I think he has put in some great, a couple of saves that have changed. And at the end of the day, if it goes down and he doesn't save, if they score, if we lose 1-2-0, he doesn't save those. We're sitting here complaining. I think we've got like I'm hailing Tosin for that block against Everton. I feel like we've got to give Sanchez credit, but I do hear you. And obviously I'm still very much pro Jorgensen. I'm still very much on that side of the fence, but I'm playing devil's advocate, to be honest. And just one last thing, because obviously I did mention there is a little bit of lag, so I don't really want to take this on too much longer. And obviously you've got stuff to do as well. So in terms of, you just mentioned Gusto very briefly, Reece James coming back from injury. He won't be ready for this weekend. I highly doubt he will anyway. Not this weekend, Thursday. He won't be ready for Thursday, but he should be back in for the full team training very soon, and then obviously in the team thereafter. How do you feel about Malo Gusto this season? A lot of Chelsea fans feel like he's fallen off. And against Everton, he obviously played left back, wasn't very effective. Also doesn't seem to be able to do the inverted role particularly well, specifically when it involves getting into the areas in and around the box. He doesn't have a very good shot. How do you feel about him this season? And when Reece James comes back, is it straight back into the team, or does Gusto have a leg to stand on?
Yeah, well, I mean, the reason I mentioned it here is just I feel like he never really got the he never really won people round. He had the good performances after being not amazing, okay with it, as Chelsea fans, and understanding the situation with Reece James, and we might need a player who can invert on the other wing if should we need it. So I feel like we ended up bearing with, but he didn't have that Cucurella moment of like kind of turning everything. I think he can do, but I think once Reece James comes in, that's a Chelsea captain, that's a Chelsea diehard, that's someone who wants to play for this club, loves this club. And I think we've got to prioritise Reece James. And obviously, when not everything's said and done, I think the footballing ability is night and day between the pair of them. You have to take Reece James every single day. It's just the Reece James that we've spoken about tirelessly over 2 years. It's difficult for Malo Gusto. It's going to be difficult to, particularly with the performances not really getting up to the level that they probably should be at. He's good enough, but he's just not quite good enough, if you know what I mean. And I think once Reece James comes in, that is a player that is. I think Reece James.
All right.
No.
All right, nice. All right, I think we're gonna wrap. We're gonna wrap this one up. I think we've run through everything pretty quickly, to be fair, and we've covered the majority of this week's topic. We will be bringing you more streams this week. Don't worry. And Charms and I will both be at the game on Boxing Day. So anybody, let us know if you're watching in the comments and you're going to the game at the Bridge on Thursday against Fulham. Let us know. There might be a little Two Blues giveaway for a ticket as well. Actually, I mean, Charms, if you want, I might have. Oh, well, actually, we could talk about that off stream. But yeah, make sure to like, comment, subscribe to the channel. Follow at Two Blues Podcast on the Instagram and the TikTok. Yeah, we'll cover more on Boxing Day. It won't be a live match reaction. It will be a delayed match reaction. But there will be some sort of reaction on Boxing Day. I'll probably be battered as well. So you'll probably get some live streams on the TikTok and Instagram tomorrow and Thursday as well. So yeah, follow us on all socials. Yeah. Appreciate everybody tuning in. And yeah, as always, make sure to I don't know. I've run out of things to say. I'm lost.
God bless, and I'm sorry for the lag, man. X must be crazy. God bless you.
This whole thing's thrown me, bro. This whole my brain's freezing up. I'm like, right, it's 20 minutes. It can't be time for the outro yet. What are you doing? What are you doing? I'm struggling, fam. But yeah, it is what it is. Come on, man. Right. Love you. Appreciate you. We'll see you tomorrow.